All right. Hello, everyone. This is Javiera for 1133podcast.com. And it's a beautiful day here in Bali. Actually, it's kind of hot. So sending you the best of vibe to whatever you're doing and eager to share with you today a conversation related to sexual awakening and healing through awakening the cervix. A topic that I must be honest, I know nothing about. So that's why I'm here today with Olivia Bryant, an expert sexologist and co-founder of the fast-growing global movement Awakening the Cervix. Olivia, welcome. Thank you so much for being here and really eager to explore such a topic with you.
Hi, Avi. Thanks for having me on your show. Yeah, so I started Awaken the Cervix about 3 months ago with my friend and colleague, Shaylee Sallin, and it's been an amazing ride.
I'm very curious about that journey. I really want to know, how did everything started?
I had just come out of a really traumatic relationship experience, and I went to my friend who was a clinical Pilates instructor, and she had a feel externally around my pelvis, and she said, oh, your psoas, which is a big muscle attaching the upper body to the lower body, it's so locked, and it's like your muscles of your pelvis are completely closing in on themselves. And it was like my body was so intelligently saying no and shutting down sexually. I had no libido. I was in a really, I suppose, just not a great place. And it's hard when you're working in my field and you feel completely disconnected from your own sex. And so I was in Bali and I went and had a session, a tantric healing session. I wanted to experience a process called de-armoring. So de-armoring is a way of releasing the armor that we embody to protect ourselves. So often we feel unsafe sexually, even unconsciously. So we hold and brace in the pelvis and vagina. So the other reasons that we might have armoring are things like severe trauma, severe abuse can cause a cellular memory that creates a holding in the pelvis. Penetration before you're ready. So the cervix and the uterus has not pulled up in the body, and therefore that anything penetrating bangs into the cervix, and so that's incredibly painful. And so what happens is the walls of the vagina, they harden, the cervix can harden, and after repetitive traumatic experience, it can go numb and also retreat. In the most magical, intelligent way, it will pull back and away like, nope, I'm closed for business. Other things that cause armoring and trauma to the cervix are medical procedures that are sort of done to us. You know, pap smears being, there's the classic, you go, you get a pap smear and you brace. It's like, oh, here we go again. I'm going to open my legs and you're going to look into my vagina and you're going to put something up there. And, it's not safe really for a woman. It's not enjoyable. I don't know one woman who enjoys getting a pap smear. And so with these, the treatments, so subtle trauma or more major trauma, the vagina will create knots like any muscle, so can cause painful sex. The cervix can numb out. And so we experience less sensation during sex. And so I went and had a session with this healer, and I had so much pain in my pelvis. It was like the biggest release. It was emotional. We store a lot of just emotion in the pelvis. Some of it is collective wounding of the feminine, like our story of being a female. Historically, our bodies not belonging to us, our mothers and our grandmothers' stories. It's just so deep in the pelvis, in the vagina. So there was a lot to release, and in that session, I discovered I had a completely numb cervix, and that was really disappointing for me because the cervix is a major trigger point to, I suppose, the most profound kind of orgasm or orgasmic state, whereby you can just keep on staying in a blissful ecstasy that never has to finish, or, well, you want it to finish at some point, but it can go on and on. And what happens via the cervix is when the cervix is stimulated for a long enough period of time and you have all of the beautiful neurochemistry in the body, like oxytocin and melatonin and serotonin, DMT is released in the brain. And so DMT is known as the spirit molecule, and it's what it is the transcendent aspect of sexuality, where you read about, stories of people like melting into one another and, expanding into the universe. So in a female body, that is catalyzed via the cervix. So if the cervix is numb, there's no access to this release of DMT and this transcendent state of orgasm. And even more than that is the vagus nerve, which comes out of the cervix, goes into the brain, passes through the diaphragm and the heart and the throat. It's also frozen at the point of the cervix. And so the vagus is so responsible for your sensory awareness of a space, whether it's safe for you. And so if the vagus cannot, it's a main branch of the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the calming down response. So if it's stuck in freeze, the woman cannot let go completely. She remains in a state of vigilance, aware, slightly hyper aware that something's not quite right. And so in awakening the cervix, what we're doing is opening the vagus nerve, helping the woman become safe in her body, dropping in to her body, and opening this profound doorway of pleasure. Because for most, I'm going to say most, I can't be quoted on that, but from what I understand through my work is that most women have pain at the cervix or numbness at the cervix. So pain is not bad, actually. Pain actually means like there's some connection there, there's some neural connection. But numbness is like completely shut down, tuned out. And so what we're doing in this work is de-armoring the cervix, helping the cervix feel safe. And it's sort of weird to talk about the cervix like that. Like one of the women that we interviewed in the program, Celia Rayfelt, she's a midwife, and I call her the cervix whisperer because she talks to the cervix with her finger, and she can feel the cervix retreated and pulled back, like sort of in a frightened place. And when she works inside a woman's body, she can gently coax the cervix down, and she can feel the cervix soften and open. And when the cervix softens and opens, it literally pulls in her finger. Like there's the film Avatar where they attach their hair to the dragon. Yeah. It's like
for a connection.
Yeah. And so that's exactly what the cervix does to the finger and also penis. So if there's, if sex is happening, and I mean, how beautiful is that the head of the cock and the cervix, they're both heart points in the Chinese system and Taoism. If the cervix is open and available, it can come down and meet the head of the penis. And it's like total connection. Yeah, isn't that amazing? But you can imagine that for many women, we there's a lot of conditioning around sexuality and how to be sexy and, you know, what an orgasmic woman looks like. And she fucks hard and she's open and available for sex and she gets wet easily and she's easily orgasmic. So many women come into the sexual experience and feel like they have to live this part. Or they feel like they have to please their man. So maybe they have a partner that wants more sex than they do. And so they're like, oh, God, I'm just going to keep him happy and open my legs and have sex. But the body isn't ready and the cervix isn't ready. And so then there's this banging against the cervix. And then the woman might be like breathing through the pain instead of actually honoring her body's wisdom and really starting to learn what it takes for her body to be a full yes in order to receive penetration. And just because a woman is wet, it does not mean she is ready for sex. Women can be naturally quite wet. And women can feel turned on and be a bit wet. But it doesn't mean that their body is ready. So,
how do you know you're ready?
Well, just like a man has an erection, a woman has an erection too. It's just inside. So it's inside. Her erectile tissue is right it's the bulbs underneath the outer labia. It's the clitoris. It's the urethral sponge running up the backside of the urethra. Women have pound for pound the same amount of erectile tissue as men. It's just that it's inside. So, you wouldn't expect a male body, a person with a penis to penetrate you if they weren't fully erect, though it is possible. Though it's definitely one strategy is soft entry is a strategy if the man has issues in that area. But generally you would wait till the penis was erect. So it's the same for a woman. So it's just time, and really you can feel it. You're swollen, you're really swollen, and it's like your yoni or your vagina is like wanting to pull something in. Yeah, it's wanting to pull something in. And so this practice is helping a woman. So the cervical awakening practice is helping a woman develop this relationship with her genitals, with her pelvis. So she can really tune in to when she's ready. She can tune into a yes and she can tune into her no. And
I'm so excited about everything you're sharing. Like, you've made me think of so many things. And it's funny because I was thinking also that I didn't want to interrupt you at all. Because
talk and talk.
Like, you were just sharing so much. And it made me realize how little I know about my own body. How little I know about my own sexuality. How this knowledge, physical knowledge, it's linked with your emotions, as you mentioned, and it's linked to consciousness, as you mentioned as well. So I'm fascinated about about everything you're sharing. And one thing that I want to add, because listeners don't know this yet, is that when you launched your project just a few months ago, over 1,000 people came, and this was a surprise for you, right?
Yeah.
So this is telling us something.
Yeah, it went viral. So it started because after I had this healing session, I went and I said, okay, I think we need to explore this. So I asked my friend Shay Elise Allen to come on board and set up a group so that we could, do a bit of research together collectively. And then we invited people into the group and we decided, oh, well, why not create a little event?
Group.
Yep. And it grew to we had 1,200 women sign up. And we were kind of overwhelmed, oh my God, now we've created something. we better find out some information. So we got world leaders, ranging from pelvic care specialists, to a midwife, to a woman who specializes in trauma, to help us unpack what was going on with the cervix, because what was happening to women was really quite profound. There was a lot of emotional release, a lot of grieving. And it's grieving without a story. A lot of the time it's grieving without a story. It's just, what is that? I don't know. Where is it coming from? I don't know. It's just coming up. I think other times it's grieving because it's like you finally realize, you face up to the compromises you've been making with your body. Compromises that, that things that you've felt forced into. It's just sad.
So you mean not saying no, not waiting, not listening to ourselves.
Not listening to ourselves. Yeah, and just, just the sadness of the collective wounding of the feminine, essentially. Like when I first had this done to me, I had images of like women raped in Africa during war, the planet Earth, Mother Earth, just like bleeding. Then I had these images of my entire like lineage behind me, all of the women in my lineage. And it was bigger than just me. So it's kind of this storyless grief that's it's just bigger than just an individual story, I think. So there's that, and then a lot of raging come up, and then other crazy things like past life regressions, like childhood memories, repressed memories of abuse come up. Dream time, a lot of profound dreaming. And then also women experiencing big orgasmic states. So what we're trying to undo also is the achievement, performance focus of orgasm. And, there's no right or wrong way to achieve an orgasmic state, whether it's via the clitoris or via the vagina. There's no right or wrong way. So I want to make that really clear. And in our project, what we were trying to explore is when you have a clitoral orgasm, which is wonderful and marvelous and playful and fun, it creates a dip because you go after the dopamine high. It's like, yes, I feel so like, I want that. And then you release at climax prolactin into the system. And prolactin is what causes you to just go blah and flop. It's like, okay, I'm released. Now I can sleep.
Right.
Yeah, now I can sleep. And that's great, beautiful. What that does, though, is prevent the ongoing circulation of delicious chemicals in the body, like oxytocin, that eventually lead to this DMT release.
So what's the other way?
So the other way is to use the clitoris as a tool for arousal, and then explore internal pleasure. And for a while, if that's not your preferred way of self-pleasuring or pleasuring with a partner, you might feel frustrated and like you're cut off from your pleasure. But after a while, you start to discover really delicious parts. After you've done de-armoring and you become more sensitive, you start to discover really delicious sensations inside the vagina that you might not have noticed before. So when you do it that way, you can just keep going and going and going. And some women will experience vaginal, cervical orgasms, but they don't come with a drop-off. They come with an ability to keep going and going and going. Yeah?
Fascinating.
And the longer you can go, the more likely you have a chance of releasing DMT. But for a woman to get to that place, she has to feel safe. That is like the first place. And for a woman to feel safe, she has to feel like she's in charge of the experience, so that it's okay for her to ask for what she wants. It's okay for her to ask for her to be touched in a certain way without her feeling like she's going to make the man feel bad or like she's being demanding. If a woman feels like she has to zip it and shut her mouth and just put up with what's occurring, she cannot feel safe She needs to feel like she's got some control of the situation, like she's in charge, so she can say, this is what I would love to experience. But then she's got to be able to let go. And that's where trust comes in. And that's time.
This opens so many new possibilities. And what comes to me is the work we have to do with our partners.
Yeah.
So, what's the role of the man?
Yeah. Interesting. So this can get this doesn't have to be complex when it comes to coupling. So when it comes to the man, if he is pleasuring a woman for his own gratification, like he wants to make her come because it makes him feel like he's an adequate lover, then he is going to end up feeling potentially inadequate if she doesn't come. It's going to put pressure on her. And she's not going to feel safe. So the man, in this sense, has to be in a space of pure service. That it is, in this sense, about her experience with no goal or outcome. And the agreement between the couple, like, okay, this is what we want to explore. And the agreement is, I get to ask for what I want, and it doesn't mean that you're not a bad lover, that you're a bad lover. And then I'll let you go, and then I'll let you go. And what I mean by that is, when you take for your own pleasure, as in when you start tuning into your pleasure as a toucher, and you start really tuning in to your hand and your fingers and doing what makes you feel good, then you are in this beautiful place of giving and also receiving. So when I say you're in a place of pure service, it doesn't mean that you have to turn into a pleaser and become a martyr and kind of like, oh, now I've got to, spend, an hour, blah, 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 though you should. It should be a pure joy. But what tips this off and makes it even better is if once your woman feels like she's in charge, she's asked for what she wants, then you tune in as a toucher and you give for your own pleasure. You start to tune into your sensuality, and that kind of touching, it's beautiful. And there's always the option for the woman to say, oh, that doesn't feel quite good. Could you try this? So it's really important when you're offering instructions to frame it positively, like, that's good, and can you try this? That's good, and can you try half that speed? But then really let them go again. Yeah, and for the person who's giving, it's great to use eye contact to help the woman feel safe, and to use words. Like, for example, if they're doing the de-armoring, let me take the pain. Just give me the pain, I can take it. Or, you look so beautiful. Just relax. Eye contact, tone of voice. Like slow, beautiful. That's going to make the vagus nerve go, I'm safe. Yeah? So the partner's role, whether it's a man or a woman, is to tune into themselves as well as the partner. So it's never the man's or the woman's job to make her, so let's say partner, can you just edit that?
Yeah, which part?
I just want to be careful of using gender binary language too much.
Yes, I like that. I like that you added or a woman.
Yeah, so I'm going to say partner right now.
Yeah.
So it's really important to know that it's not your partner's job to make you feel safe. You got to take responsibility for that. And you take responsibility by, as a partnership, creating a safe enough space for you to be able to be able to ask for what you want. Yeah? If you are not in a safe relationship, then actually I don't recommend engaging in this way. Because it's going to re-traumatize you potentially. You might be judged, you might be put down, and it's not necessarily about you, it's your partner's insecurities. So there needs to be some foundational work occurring first before you engage in this way, because it's precious, precious space. So the interaction has to be a completely clean one, so that he's not giving for his own ego gratification, and she's not expecting on her partner. She's asking for what she wants and making it clear.
These are big challenges. I'm hearing.
Yeah, they're big challenges.
Yeah.
But I think they come from creating agreements first between each other. Yeah.
I would add healthy challenges.
And sorry?
Healthy challenges. Like these are challenges that.
Oh.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So they're healthy challenges.
Yes.
Well, they're going to foster greater intimacy because you have to start getting authentic with each other and being courageous about, like, it's okay if if she rages, if she cries and screams, you know, because sometimes that might happen. And it's really important for partners to safe-port each other. So she says, listen, this might happen, and if this happens, all I need you to do is just sit with me and breathe. I don't need you to fix. Or it's okay for him to say, I don't know what I'm doing. Can you just give me an instruction? Or how's that feeling? I need to hear from you. I need some communication. You know, or I'm feeling really vulnerable right now touching you in this way. I feel like I'm hurting you. Yeah? So communication gets super authentic and real. So, yeah, that's kind of big. That's a lot of information.
I love
on
it.
Partnering.
And the way you're expressing it is so clear. It's like a clear way.
You should really look into The Wheel of Consent by Betty Martin, Dr. Betty Martin. That's all Dr. Betty Martin's work. The consent part around giving and taking touch.
So what have you observed with all the women that you've been working with? I'm curious to know their transformational paths working with you and, I mean, exploring a topic that, in my case, for example, is completely new.
Yeah.
And I guess for many of them, it might be new as well.
Yeah. I think the main transformational path has been developing a relationship with the pelvic area, the yoni, the cervix, uterus, learning how to listen to the signals of the body. So what it was so profound was I could correlate tension in my vagina with what was going on in my life. That the tension would move or I would feel closed based on emotional stuff that was happening in the world. So, you know, women, one example might be the body reacting with a phantom UTI. It's not there, but it's like there's a reaction to something with a partner, and it's just like listening to those signals now. So starting to develop a resonance with the part of your body whereby you start to live from this place and you start to listen and check in and be like, does this feel good or not good? Is this a yes or a no? And so there's a real honoring, listening to the medicine of the pelvis, that this is a place of womanly wisdom, and starting to honor that. That even PMT, it's like, the premenstrual tension. It's like we're holding, as women, we're so sensitive, and we hold energy of people around us. And so this PMT for me and for some of the women, and also one of the interviewees, our experts, equated this tension, this building up of energy as a holding of stuff that we just take on and then we release. It's like this magical place in the body that we're wisdom keepers. We're keepers of all of this intuitive knowledge that we can start to tune into. I think other transformations on a playful level would be way better sex. Yeah, like the woman feeling empowered to ask for what she wants and now honoring the cervix and being like, listen, instead of banging up against the cervix, you can use your cock to de-armor my cervix. So you can put healing vibes into your cock and like just really touch my cervix gently and pull back and pull out the energy that's stuck there rather than banging into it. Yeah, and same with the rest of the vagina. The penis can like, use it as a tool to de-armor. So just, and also the sensitivity that's developed. So way better sex. And I think releasing old patterns, just releasing old stuff and starting to redefine what it means to be a woman, claiming ownership of being a sexual woman, releasing shame has been a massive one. Part of the process is sharing on the board, because shame is a social construction. So we can also release shame by being accepted by the tribe. So much of the release work is also releasing story that's shame-based.
And these are women, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Fixing relationships. So because they've become more sovereign in their own bodies, more self-loving, their connections with other people have been healed. So just this morning there was a beautiful post by a woman who said that her relationship was done last week and they were just finalizing, the breakup, and just coincided with the start of our program. And so she'd been doing this self-loving work and honoring work. And suddenly there was a coming together between the two of them, and she no longer expected of her partner. And she could just soften into herself and receive, because so many women have so much difficulty receiving because we're braced and we're doing. Yeah, we're overdoing. And so this practice, it's about receiving, finally. Because once you start to awaken the feminine, you just start to feel like you don't want to be doing. You just want to soften a bit more and receive. And that, when you apply that to sexuality, just receiving and not doing, that's when you can move into orgasmic states. Because you're not vigilant, you're not trying, you're safe enough to lie back and let yourself feel pleasure.
Olivia, I feel your words say more than any question that I could formulate right now, actually. One thing that comes to me is to ask you, why did you become a sexologist in the first place?
Well, I grew up in a family where sex was never really talked about, and I didn't understand what it even was. Like, I remember as a teenager feeling sexual feelings but not knowing what to do with them. Like, there was no discussion about masturbation at school, or it was just like sex was, something to be afraid of and not talked about and in the shadows. And so when I found myself in intimate relationships as a young adult, in my 20s, I felt this desire within me, but completely repressed and ashamed, and just no understanding of what fantasy was, afraid of my sexuality, and it caused no communication sexually in the relationship, and so it was unsatisfying for me, and I had to leave the relationship. And then one day I was sitting in New York I was waitressing in New York in a cafe, and there was a woman sitting writing a book, and I said to her, "What are you writing about?" And she said, "I'm writing a book on female sexuality." And I was like, "Oh, really?" And she said, do you mind if I can ask you a couple of questions? And I was like, sure. And the first question she asked me, like in the middle of the restaurant, it was at the end of my shift, so there's only one other table, was, so can you tell me, how do you masturbate? And I was just like, I mean, I was like 26 and, you know, really shy. And so she kind of pulled it out of me. And that became the beginning of my personal sexual awakening and journey towards where I am now, because I realized, like, if we're going to talk about being whole in the spiritual world, how can we talk about wholeness and leave out sexuality? I mean,
love it.
Yeah, it's totally, it's hypocritical.
Yeah.
You know, so I was teaching yoga for a long time, and in that conversation was coming up a lot. Wholeness, you know, you're whole, but no one was talking about sex. And it really pissed me off. And so I knew that there were women everywhere feeling shy like me, feeling like they were sexual but didn't know how to access it, feeling disassociated from their bodies. And so I decided to make it my work, to help people overcome what I'd overcome. And now I'm starting to understand the deeper layers of sexual trauma, and that every time you repress a desire, it registers in the body as a trauma. It's like, no, stop. Yeah? And so there's a fear pattern develops. And this fear pattern of bracing is held in the body. So it's not just a mental construct, shame. It's embodied. And we've known through this cervix work that it's all here. It's all held here, and the breasts. And so part of releasing shame is de-armoring. So de-armoring is both a physical and an emotional thing. Men can de-armor too. I mean, men have armoring around being a man and performance issues, and I got to keep my cock hard, so I'm going to do my PC squeezes, and that's just causing tension. And so there's de-armoring of a man as well, homophobia. Yeah? So being able to receive as a man. So there's that's the long story.
But, I love it. I feel excited about what you're doing. I feel it's so needed. I come from a background in South America, right? Where it's exactly what you're expressing. Where I can feel the shame, I can feel the lack of communication. We didn't even have sexual education, at a deep level at all.
Mm-hmm.
So what you're doing, it's transformational.
Yeah. Well, what excites me, I don't know, sometimes I feel like I live in a bubble. Like I sometimes feel like I live in a bubble where everybody that I come into contact with, we're on the same wavelength. We value sexuality. But then you go into other areas and other regions of the world, and sexuality is so viciously repressed. Like that, there was a case, I think, in the Middle East where a woman was raped and she was thrown into prison for having extramarital affair.
Wow.
And so, the sexuality is so repressed around the world. I sometimes do feel like, will it ever shift? Because I feel like until this piece is brought into the conversation of evolution, of consciousness and evolution, how are we ever going to evolve as a collective, as humanity? If sexuality is always shamed or abused, traumatized. So I think we're just at the beginning, and there's a long way to go, but we have to start somewhere. And my hope is that this work can reach women in developing countries and start to shift ideas around, to help women feel more empowered wherever they are. And to have ownership of their own bodies, to feel sovereign and at home, that their bodies belong to them and no other. And through this work, I believe there is a real coming home. There is a real healing. So that is my hope. That we can pull sexuality and unite it with spirituality and other conversations around consciousness so that we can celebrate it. And not just, a few hippies living in Ubud, like on a global level. And this project is really global. Like we've reached Qatar and Ethiopia and all over Europe and the islands, Pacific Islands and Asia, Korea and Tokyo. So it is moving.
Spreading. So it's
But
so needed. And
Yeah.
it's being called.
It's being called. It's actually,
Thank you for answering that call.
Yeah, sometimes I don't even feel like, I just feel like I'm the vessel. Like I'm just the mouth, and I'm the mouthpiece of consciousness. And same with Shay, my partner. We're just like letting it flow through us and letting this energy move as it wants to move. And we now want to try to figure out how we can make as much of it free so that we can really get it out there whilst supporting ourselves in the work. So that's our next mission, is to figure out that balance, is how to spread it and keep it free and make it sustainable. So
There is another piece that comes to me. And, you're supporting women around the world.
yeah.
So how important is for you, how important do you see that men are doing the work that you're doing for
God.
men?
Oh, so important. There are men's groups around the world. There's Tantra studies. We're hoping to bring I'm definitely hoping to bring something forward for men and couples. It's like there's been people have said like women are leading the shift in consciousness, but we cannot do it without men. And it is a scary thing. It really means that the idea of masculinity, the masculine code, has to be shifted, and that starts from childhood. There's all these ideas around being a man that make it very hard to enter into these vulnerable spaces, to share feelings, to open up vulnerably sexually. So it's not just you can do the work. Right? On a physical level, you can learn information, but a lot of this is shifting masculine code, changing ideas about what it means to be a man, and that to step into your full manhood is to be able to receive, express emotion, communicate, ask for what you want, and be fully like on your path of doing, courageous, and powerful. Yeah? Affecting change with empathy and compassion and not dominance. And it's possible. And there are teachers out there. And so if you're a man and you're listening to this and you want to do the work, you can read people like David Data, do some research. Who are the men out there offering this work? There are men out there. And I would say if you want to come together in partnership and really create magic, both people need to be in this learning. It's like we are connected. We're connected. And you don't want the woman to be coaching.
Yes.
The woman doesn't want to be a coach. She wants to sit back and be able to receive too. So
And how powerful it would be if both of them are working with themselves.
Yeah.
And both of them have wounds, and both of them want to relax
Definitely.
and let go and
Definitely.
feel love.
Yeah. What does a man need to feel safe? Just like a woman, he needs to feel safe too. And he can't feel safe if he's mind reading, having to figure out how to work this female's body, because they're all so different. Do you know what I mean?
We don't even know.
Well, that's the other part, right? So that's the other part of this project, is like really getting to know your body. Like really getting to know it. So you know where your tight spots are, you know where your pleasure buttons are, and you're comfortable saying, oh, it's right up there above the ridgy, find that ridgy place, it's right up there, about an inch higher, it's like you just know where to go. You're familiar with it. You're not like, maybe, you know? And it changes, of course. It's like, these things change, but it is so important to know your own body before expecting someone else to know it for you.
So true.
Yeah.
Olivia, where can people find you?
So you can find me at oliviabryant.com.au, and you can find our project at www.awakenthecervix.com. And I think we'll be running our next journey in June. We're right in the middle of a journey right now. So it's called the 21-Day Pleasure Journey, Awaken the Cervix.
I love it. Let me express my gratitude towards your work. I feel the importance of it. I feel how it's rippling across society. I also feel the call of men, believe it or not, that they also want to, shift, expand into ease. So I'm very honored that I met you and that I'm been having this conversation with you. Definitely someone who could tap into your project as well and learn from you. Not at all knowledgeable on this topic, and I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you so much. I just want to say we are all teachers for each other, and I don't know everything. I'm just a beginner too. And so one thing that's so important for me philosophically is that we come together in community and we learn as teachers for each other, and that not one person holds the wisdom, that we all hold the wisdom collectively, and that your experiences are so valuable for my learning. So you were my teacher too. So thank you so much, Harvey, for having me. I feel so privileged to be asked to be on your podcast. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming and being together. And thank you to all the listeners to co-create a better, more beautiful world.